It was close to midnight when the fog rolled in. Not the kind that drifts lazily across the water, but a curtain, thick and white, swallowing the horizon until there was nothing left but the ship and the sound of the sea. The lamps along the deck gave off only a weak glow, halos in the mist that seemed to shrink tighter with every passing moment. I leaned against the rail, listening to the wood breathe beneath me. The ship was old. You could hear it in the groan of the planks, in the steady creak of ropes straining against the masts. Every sound carried in the stillness, sharp and lonely. Somewhere in the darkness, a wave tapped gently against the hull, as if testing us, reminding us that we weren't alone. I told myself it was just another night at sea, a voyage like many before it. The stars were gone, the sky a blank slate, but nothing about that was unusual. Nothing that should have made me uneasy. And yet, there it was. A weight in the air, quiet but heavy, as though the ocean itself was holding its breath. The rest of the crew had long since turned in. I was the only one awake, or at least the only one walking the deck. Their absence made the silence sharper. No muffled laughter from the mess, no cough from the bunks below. Just me, the endless fog, and the faint thrum of the engine far beneath my feet. Sometimes, when the night stretches too long, you begin to notice things that don't belong. The way the lamps flicker, though no wind stirs. The way footsteps echo, though you're sure you're the only one here. That night, I felt the first hint of it, that we were adrift in something larger than the sea. I didn't know it then, but the moment the fog touched our ship, the voyage had already ended. We just hadn't reached the point of realizing it. So I stayed there, staring into the mist, waiting for something, anything. But the ocean remained blank, endless, and still. Morning came without a sunrise, at least not the kind you expect at sea. The fog had not lifted overnight, but it softened, just enough to make the horizon a pale smear of light. It was impossible to tell where the sky ended and the water began. Everything seemed blended together, washed in muted grays. Still, the day began as it always did. I rose before the others, climbing the ladder to the deck and checking the compass set into the wheel. The needle twitched slightly, pausing before settling north. It had done that before, so I told myself it was nothing, a trick of metal and magnet. Jenkins emerged soon after, bucket and brush in hand, as faithful as the tide. He barely spoke before his first chore. He crouched down and began scrubbing the deck, the rhythm of his strokes almost hypnotic. There was something strangely comforting about it. The scrape, splash, scrape. A sound that said, yes, life continues. Below deck, the cook banged pots in the galley. The smell of frying bread drifted through the air, warm against the salt and damp. When breakfast was called, the men gathered in their usual places. Some ate in silence. Others swapped tired jokes, their laughter echoing strangely in the narrow space. It was routine, ordinary, almost enough to forget the fog pressing against the portholes. After the meal, I went to the logbook. Every morning, without fail, I recorded the date, the wind direction, and our estimated course. My pen scratched neatly across the page, but when I glanced at yesterday's entry, something caught my eye. The handwriting looked different. Still mine, but more hurried, uneven, as if I'd been half asleep when I wrote it. I didn't remember feeling that way. The captain, as usual, stayed in his quarters until noon. He was a man of habits, appearing only when the day had already burned its early hours away. When he finally did step out, he walked the deck with hands clasped behind his back, gazing into the fog as though expecting it to part for him. He never commented on it, never gave a hint that anything was unusual. That silence, more than anything, unsettled me. Day by day, the rhythm continued. Log the winds, scrub the deck, eat in the galley, check the instruments. But sometimes the lamps flickered, though the generator below purred steady. Sometimes a conversation would stop halfway, as if the speaker had forgotten the rest of their thought. Sometimes the air felt colder than it should. Small things, always small things. Nothing enough to call trouble, and yet, beneath the steady beat of routine, a question pulsed. Was this truly the same ship we had boarded, or had we crossed into something else entirely? By the third night, the fog had grown thick enough that it seemed to have weight. It clung to the deck rails, seeped into the sails, and curled like smoke through the narrow gaps of the ship. Lamps, no matter how bright, cast only shallow circles of light. as if the fog swallowed their glow before it could reach the air. We spoke less, all of us, not out of fear, at least not openly, but because the silence of the sea seemed to demand it. Every sound traveled too far, stretched thin across the mist, until even a whisper carried like a shout. So we lowered our voices. We moved softer. We listened. That was when the knocking began. The first time, I thought it was nothing more than the hull shifting against the water. A dull sound, 3 slow taps, as if someone had rapped their knuckles against the wood from the other side. Jenkins heard it too. I saw his head lift, brush pausing mid-scrub. He met my eyes, waiting for me to confirm it. I didn't. I told him it was nothing. But the next night, it came again. 3 knocks. Always 3. The captain said nothing about it, though I could tell he heard. I saw him pause at the sound, one hand lingering on the railing longer than usual, before continuing his walk as though it had never happened. His silence made the noise worse, somehow, like we weren't allowed to acknowledge what we all knew was there. The whispers followed soon after. At first I thought it was the pipes, the low groan of steam moving through metal. But once, leaning close to listen, I swore I heard words. Not English, not any tongue I knew, just faint syllables curling into one another like smoke. When I pulled away, the sound stopped. That same night, O'Hara swore he'd seen a lantern bobbing out on the water, a small light swaying in the fog. We all crowded the rail, squinting into the gray. For a moment, I thought I saw it too, a glimmer just beyond the mist, moving slow as if carried by a hand. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. No splash, no fade, simply vanished. Later, another crewman swore he'd seen someone standing on deck, a tall figure, by the forward mast, half shrouded in the fog. He called out, thinking it was Jenkins or me, but the figure didn't move. When he stepped closer, there was nothing there. Just rope and canvas. We laughed about it, of course. Called it a trick of the mist, a tired eye, a mind too eager to fill in the gaps. But the laughter was thin, forced. The kind of laughter that dies quickly and leaves only silence behind. And so the days bled together. Gray mornings, pale noons, endless nights. The fog never lifted, not once. It was always there, as if we were sailing not through air and sea, but through some endless in-between. The ship carried on. The routines remained, but beneath the rhythm, the unease was growing. Not loud, not obvious, just enough to make you glance over your shoulder when you thought no one was looking. Just enough to make you wonder if you were truly the only one awake when you stood watch at night. The first to go was Jenkins. It happened quietly, as if disappearance itself had become a routine. One morning, his bucket and brush were there, still damp from the last stroke of water he'd dragged across the boards. His boots, too, set neatly beside his bunk. But Jenkins was gone. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard a splash. The captain insisted he must have fallen overboard, though there was no break in the rail, no sign of a struggle. The sea, calm as ever, gave nothing back. The words sat heavy on us, unconvincing, but no one argued. It was easier not to. Days blurred. Another vanished. O'Hara left his mug of coffee on the galley table, steam still rising from it. His chair sat pushed back, as though he'd only stepped away for a moment. But he didn't return. After him came the cook. Pots boiled over on the stove, unattended. The air smelled of burned bread for hours. By evening, we all knew he was gone. One by one, the ship grew quieter. The bunks emptied. The laughter, the voices, the footsteps that once filled the narrow halls, they all faded, leaving behind only the hollow creak of wood and the endless fog pressing against the portholes. It was then that I found the captain's journal. I hadn't meant to pry. But his door, always locked, stood slightly ajar. Inside, the room smelled of damp and ink. His log lay open on the desk, pages covered in cramped, restless handwriting. The entries stretched back decades, far longer than any voyage should last. And yet the words described this ship, this fog, this silence. Crew vanishing without a sound, lights flickering, a sea without horizon. One line repeated, scrawled again and again in the margins. The ship that never comes back. I closed the journal, but the words clung to me. That night I wandered to the radio room. The machine crackled faintly, though we had received no signals in weeks. On a whim, I turned the dial. For a moment, there was only static. Then, beneath it, a voice. Low, drawn out, layered with something not human, not English, not anything I knew. It repeated, soft and steady, as though calling my name. I sat frozen, unable to breathe. The voice was there, and then it wasn't, fading into the hum of empty air. After that, I began to dream differently. Or perhaps I stopped dreaming at all. Sleep and waking blurred. I would close my eyes in my bunk and open them on deck, with no memory of how I'd climbed the ladder. I'd look down at the logbook and see words I didn't remember writing, in handwriting that leaned too sharply to the left. The fog thickened in my thoughts as much as it did in the air. Time slipped and the ship's rhythm faltered. Days folded into one another until I could no longer tell whether we'd been adrift for weeks or for a lifetime. The men were gone. The captain rarely left his quarters. And I walked the decks alone, listening for voices that might never have been there. Always calm, always quiet, but never at peace. It was sometime after Jenkins and the others had gone that I noticed the sea had not changed. No matter how far we sailed, the same buoy drifted past the starboard side. The same rusted frame, half submerged, leaning into the waves as though caught forever in mid-sinking. The first time, I thought nothing of it. The second time, I frowned. By the fifth time, my pen froze over the logbook, unable to write the words. We had not altered course, and yet the sea returned us to the same place, as though the horizon had folded in on itself. I began to wait for the sunrise, thinking daylight would break the spell. But when the sky lightened, it did not reveal the sun. Instead, it revealed more black. Clouds that weren't clouds, but a smear of darkness where light should have been. The ocean reflected it like ink, and still the ship moved forward, though toward what, I could no longer say. It was during those endless gray days that I caught sight of them. At first, in the reflection of the galley's porthole, a man, standing just behind me. When I turned, the room was empty. Another time, in the brass of the compass, I saw two faces instead of one, both mine, but one smiling faintly, though my lips were still. Sometimes the crew returned, or seemed to. I would find Jenkins at his post, hunched over his bucket, scrubbing the same section of deck again and again. But when I called his name, he did not answer. When I stepped closer, the bucket was empty, the brush dry. He would vanish between one blink and the next, leaving only the faint sound of scrubbing echoing in my head. Others came back too. O'Hara in the galley, hands moving as though cooking, though the stove was cold. The cook at the table, spoon raised to lips that were no longer there. Their faces were pale, blurred, as though the fog itself had begun to wear them down. I could not decide whether these were ghosts or memories replaying themselves until they frayed into nothing. I thought, once, of leaving. The lifeboats were still secured along the side. One night, I lowered one, climbing down the rope ladder until the fog licked my face. The boat drifted quietly away, swallowed almost instantly by the gray. Relief touched me, until I returned to the deck and saw it again, tied in its place, dry as if it had never been lowered. I tried the doors below deck. One opened into the mess hall, then another into the same mess hall again. I walked a corridor that circled back on itself, though I had never turned. The ship was no longer a ship, but a loop, a trap. Every path leading back to the same starting point. By then, I had stopped marking the days in the log. The ink blurred, the pages filled with entries I didn't recall writing. Still here, the ship that never comes back. And sometimes, when I looked too long into the fog, I thought I saw the outline of another vessel drifting parallel to ours. Silent, dark, its deck crowded with figures who did not move. But when I blinked, it was gone. The mystery did not reveal itself. It only deepened. No explanations, no answers. Only questions that sank like stones into the endless sea. I cannot remember the last time I spoke to another living soul. Perhaps it has only been a day. Perhaps it has been years. Time here has grown thin, stretched until it is see-through. I write in the logbook, though the words no longer feel like mine. The letters slant oddly, curling where my hand should be steady. Sometimes when I return to the book, whole pages are filled with sentences I do not recall setting down. They repeat the same line, over and over. The ocean is calling. I do not remember writing it. Sleep no longer feels separate from waking. I close my eyes in the galley, and when I open them again, I am on deck, staring into the fog. Once I awoke to find myself standing at the rail, my hands gripping the wood so tightly that my knuckles ached. I could not recall climbing the ladder. I could not recall moving at all. The sea speaks to me now, not in words I can name, but in tones that slip beneath thought, deep and resonant, like the hum of a vast bell beneath the water. It rises in my dreams, low and patient, until it fills every corner of my mind. When I wake, the echo lingers, and I am not sure if I truly woke at all. I tried to mark the days with scratches along the wall of my cabin, but the marks shift when I look away. Sometimes there are 10, sometimes none. I no longer trust my own memory of time. The fog erases everything. I eat less. Not because the food is gone, but because hunger feels unimportant here. I sip water only when I remember. And sometimes I wonder if I am still a body at all, or only the thought of one, carried along by the ship that moves endlessly without destination. The captain is gone. His quarters stand open, his journal closed upon the desk. I do not enter again. I am not sure I would find him there, and I am not sure I would want to. So I drift. I walk the length of the deck, back and forth, my steps falling into the same weary rhythm. I stare into the fog until my eyes blur. I whisper to myself just to hear a voice. And always, beneath it all, the ocean calls. Patient, soft, certain. Sometimes I think it has already taken me. I cannot tell whether I am writing these words or only dreaming them. The logbook lies open before me, yet the pen feels weightless in my hand, as if it guides itself. Perhaps I have already written this ending 100 times before. Perhaps you are only reading the fragments that managed to survive. The ship is quieter now than it has ever been. No footsteps, no voices, not even the creak of wood. Only the hush of the fog, breathing against the deck like a living thing. Sometimes I think the ship has already gone still, anchored in some place outside of maps, outside of time. I sleep more often than I wake. At least I think I do. Dreams fold over me like waves. I dream of standing on the rail, arms spread, the sea rising up to take me. I dream of the voices, soft and many, singing from beneath the surface. Their song is not frightening anymore. It is gentle, almost kind. A lullaby meant to carry me deeper. Once I thought I saw land. A faint outline through the fog, jagged and dark, like the spine of a mountain. But as I watched, it shifted, stretched, and dissolved back into cloud. I realized then that there is no land here. There never was. Only the sea and the ship and the fog that binds them together. I wonder if I have already vanished like the others. Perhaps I am no longer here at all. Perhaps what remains is only the echo of a man, pacing the deck, writing words that will never be found. The ocean calls again tonight, louder, clearer. It does not frighten me now. I think it has waited long enough. If anyone finds this, if these pages drift to another shore, I ask only this: do not follow. Do not search the waters for this ship. It does not return. It does not belong to your world anymore. Let the fog keep its secrets. Let the sea cradle its dead. I feel my eyes closing again. My hand grows heavy. Perhaps this is the last line I will write. The ship drifts forward, slow and patient, into the mist. The fog closes, white and endless, and I am so very tired. Good night.